Kia ora. This is the second video in the series, 5 things to make you a better Power Platform builder. In the last video, we looked at why it's not always the best thing to do to open up the Maker portal when you're building Power Platform solutions. In this video, we'll look at how to work smarter. So what do we mean about working smarter? The whole idea here is to look at ways that you can actually work that save you time, and also working smarter in the sense of how we can work with the teams. The context of the working smarter here is really around doing the right things when it comes to building applications, and specifically around naming things like your controls or your forms or your screens. And I'll go into a bit more detail on the next slide as to why that it's going to be important to you. So let's start with the save yourself and your team time. When you follow a good naming convention and you mark up everything that you've done and you add comments and you follow, let's say, a professional methodology, you save yourself a lot of time in actually finding those controls and finding what you're doing later. It also helps your team to understand what your intention was when you were building your application. Simple things like following a naming convention when it comes to variables, or making sure that you have added a comment to a piece of complex code, will make a huge amount of difference to your team when they're actually trying to debug the application, or if you're working as a collective. It also makes it a lot easier for people to find what you're looking for. If you're a maker who's building Canvas apps, you'll know that once you start adding screens and you add an image and a gallery and a form, another gallery and another form and another image, after a while, finding that one gallery that has your supplier list, instead of looking for gallery underscore suppliers, you're looking for gal5 or gal6. It makes it really difficult to find. And if you're thinking, well, you know, I know what I'm doing, it's my application. It's great if you're sitting there and you're just building something really quickly. But if you're coming back a day later or 2 days later, or you have to come back 2 weeks later and fix something, or maybe there's a bug or enhancement, it becomes a lot more difficult, because by then you've gone through a lot of gallery 6s in many applications. You no longer have context. You might also have added a line of code that does something specific that you've forgotten why you've added it there, or what the context is and how it fits into the rest of your application. And imagine if you can't figure it out, how difficult it's going to be for your team to figure it out. And following on that, teamwork makes the dream work. When you're building solutions, and we know coming down the line in especially Canvas apps, we'll be looking at co-authoring experience. We're looking at co-authoring when it comes to things like Power Automate as well. So multiple people could actually work on an application at the same time. In that case, following a naming convention makes a lot more sense, and naming your controls smartly and naming your screen smartly, and even right down to model-driven apps where you're naming your pages properly or your views intuitively, it's going to make a huge difference to your team working collectively to be able to work faster and also to understand what they're doing. Let's have a look at some practical examples. If you're declaring a variable in your application, name it var and then what the variable does. For instance, if you are setting a variable that will hold something like the person's full name, var underscore full name. Don't do var fn for full name, because nobody understands what fn is later, definitely not the other members of your team. So actually name your variable something that makes a lot more sense. The same would apply to collections. If you're declaring collections in your application, name them col and then what the collection name is. So var for variable, col for col. These are industry standards. Anybody who works with Power Apps or Power Platform solutions or even code solutions, as soon as they see those with the var dash or var underscore, will know exactly what you're trying to do. You're declaring a variable or you're setting a collection. And again, same with variables. If you are declaring a collection, name it what it is. So col underscore filtered supplier list, col underscore country codes. That makes it a lot easier for you to reference it later or remember what that collection was meant to do. And once again, it's going to make it a lot easier for your team to understand what you were trying to do in your application. And last but not least, add comments to your application. Now this might sound like a bit of a weird one because we're doing low code, no code. Why would I need to comment? Comment is very much a developer thing, isn't it? Not necessarily. The idea behind comments is to add context to what you're doing in your application. If you are going down the path of building, and we'll go again with using a Canvas apps as an example, there's a very good chance at some stage you are going to switch over into the code view. So you might click on a button and you want to go on click or on select, have something happen. And that on select might not be simple as just as submit form. You might want to declare a variable, clear a collection, have a piece of functionality execute. You know why you're doing that. The next person who's debugging your application or the next person your team who has to work with that screen doesn't. And by adding a comment there, it gives them context. I'll do a practical example of where it also works quite well. About a year back, I built an application for a customer, and one of the things I needed to do when the application loaded was find out what month we were in. I assumed there would be a formula for month that I could just wrap around the date, but there wasn't. Not at that stage there wasn't, so I had to go and do a little bit of coding and go and find out what the month is by doing extrapolation. I added a line of comments there explaining why I did it. It was for my own sanity because I knew I'd have to debug the application or support it later. A year later, we now have a function in Power Apps for finding out what the month is. So I'm able to go back, find that piece of code and replace it. The person that is debugging that application a year later, when they get to that part of the app, might look at it and go, why on earth did this person write this complex set of code just to find the month when there's a formula? But if I have a comment there, they have the context of it. So it makes it a lot easier then to support and potentially enhance the application as well. Comments take seconds to add. Just whack, added this to declare a variable to get the date. Simple as that. And it will save you so much time and supportability and working with your team at a later stage. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to see more content, I'll be dropping a video once a week. If there's specific topics you'd like me to potentially address that you're not aware of, what it does, or would like a bit more information, please leave a comment or a note, and I will definitely add that to the catalog. And thank you for watching.